Oh boy, where do I start? Where do I start? Ah, I know. Remember when I was saying that Immortal had too many damn people in it? Well, guess what, TNA? You turned Fortune, and now the babyface faction has too many damn people in it. Plus, you pretty much cut Immortal's legs out from under them by doing this. You took the 4 best guys out of that group, and now Immortal's starting lineup has been reduced to the Hardys, Jeff Jarrett, the botch Rob Terry, and the 2 Jobber security guards. That is a sad, sad faction. Now that you have an overabundance of babyfaces, you have to use every single Job Squad member you have just to fill enough spots to feud with them. Now, granted, they got Hernandez in there, and that helps, but he's not going to solve this problem. The whole feud just has way too many people in it. In fact, this entire show has too many people. It really is getting ridiculous now. They desperately need to spotlight and focus on a smaller group of guys, but they're trying to spotlight everyone at once. And it doesn't work. It's not effective. The roster is too big, you don't have enough TV time, so many people are getting lost in the shuffle. Remember Crimson? That new guy who burst onto the scene, who had all this mystique? Who looked like he was on the fast track to becoming a major player? Remember how I said he was going to get shoved into the background? Well, look what's happened. Crimson has been shoved into the background. He doesn't stand out anymore. He's just one guy in the middle of a giant mob of people. Matt Morgan, same deal. Sure, he was in a match with Ken Anderson this week, but the match was too short, and there were no pre-match promos to build up to it at all. This was a rematch from the main event of the last pay-per-view, and it didn't feel like it meant anything. And why? Because there wasn't enough time available to allow it to mean anything. And Scott Steiner. Anyone out there who still thinks the turn in Fortune face was anything other than a last-minute decision after the main event Mafia plan fell through, look at Scott Steiner. What the hell did you bring this guy in for? You sign him to what is no doubt a fat contract just so you can stick him in the middle of a giant crowd of babyfaces and then book him in a 6-man tag match that you throw together for the pay-per-view at the last minute against Gunner, Murphy, and Rob Terry? And oh my lord, that match is going to be ghastly. You've got probably the 3 worst workers in the company on the heel team when you've gone out of your way in recent weeks to spell out to the audience in no uncertain terms that these guys completely suck. Scott Steiner, who can't be much better at this point, I feel terrible for Beer Money. They do not deserve to be thrown into the middle of all that. And it doesn't make any sense to put them in there either. Robert Roode cuts this awesome promo on Jeff Jarrett saying that they were the ones who built this company, but they kept getting pushed aside for a bunch of has-beens and they're not taking it anymore. And then you book them in a match where they're going to team up with one of those very same has-beens they just said they hate so much. What the hell? Put Crimson in there, for God's sake. You got Beer Money teaming with Scott Steiner? For what reason? I guess because now that they have Steiner on the payroll, they feel like they have to find a spot for him somewhere, so they shoehorn him into a match that it makes absolutely no sense for him to be a part of. And unfortunately, the biggest casualty in all this damn overcrowding was Fortune themselves. After their face turn last week, Booking 101 tells us that you'd really want to spotlight them this week and cash in on their momentum. Maybe give them all promo time, feature them in separate segments, and then maybe book them in a big 8-man tag main event and put them over strong. Something like that. But no, you did a great job with them in that opening segment, and Robert Roode did come off like a big star there, but the rest of the show was focused on everything but Fortune. Robert Roode gives up his spot in the main event to Kurt Angle, which pretty much directly contradicts what he said in that great promo. James Storm and Kazarian didn't say a single word. I mean, the only one who really got anything to do after that opening segment was AJ. And yes, they did put AJ over Jeff Jarrett in the main event. I appreciate that. But before that can even sink in, you throw it away so you can do another massive brawl featuring as many people as you can cram into one segment as humanly possible. As if we haven't seen enough of those by now. But before I move on, I have a question. Who hired Scott Steiner? This is a legitimate question, okay? If we're staying in kayfabe here, Bischoff and Hogan still have control of TNA. So if they're still technically running the company, then how the hell did Scott Steiner get in there? Somebody had to sign him to a contract. It couldn't have been Hogan because, as Dixie herself told us, Hogan does not have signatory rights. So, how did he get there? Did Bischoff sign Steiner only for Steiner to turn against him? Did Jarrett sign him? Did someone else sign him? Is this part of some new swerve? How did he get there? Who gave him his contract? Does anyone have an explanation for this? Here's something else I have no explanation for. What happened to Immortal needing all the championships? They told us they needed to have all the titles in the company because the titles meant power and they needed that power to ward off that federal judge. And I would think that with the judge's verdict coming up in less than a month, they'd be really under the gun like never before to get all those titles. But at Genesis, they lose the world title. They're in no hurry to get it back. And now that fortune turned against them, they suddenly find themselves without the X Division and the tag team titles on top of that. And what are they doing about this? Nothing! They put beer money in a non-title 6-man tag match at the pay-per-view, and Kazarian doesn't even have a match. They gave him the night off. If the storyline of Immortal needing all the titles was dropped, that's fine. Whatever, I don't care. But you have to explain it. You have to tell us why it was dropped. One line is all it takes. Just have Bischoff say something like, "Our lawyers informed us that having all the titles will have no legal bearing on this case." Boom! Done! Easy! That's all you need. I'm not trying to be anal here. I'm just saying that if you drop a storyline prematurely, you have to give the audience some kind of closure so we know that there was an ending point to this thing. Something else that I really wish would have an ending point is this Angle-Jarrett feud. I hate this feud. It's getting way too much focus. It's a complete waste of Kurt Angle's time. But from what I've seen, I may be in the minority in thinking that. So be it. But now they're taking it to a new low by bringing the kids into it. They were exploiting the kids in those videos last week. I didn't like it, but I gave him a pass on it. But now they've got this stipulation where if Kurt beats Jarrett at the pay-per-view, he gets sole custody of his kids. I know this is kayfabe. I know it's not real. But you have to at least maintain the illusion that it's real. If you want to do reality-based storylines, you have to keep some kind of semblance of reality. But when you have these people letting the custody of their children be decided by the outcome of a pro wrestling match, reality goes out the window. All this stipulation does is make me think that someone needs to call child services and get those kids taken away. I'm sure they're all good parents in real life, but kayfabe-wise, none of these people should be raising children. Maybe I'm alone in this. I don't know, but I just don't like this at all. They had a 6-man tag team tables match. Duh. Why was this a 6-man tag? Because they were so pressed for time that they had to try to cram 3 feuds into one segment. So Samoa Joe and the Pope run to the back almost immediately. Van Dam and Matt Hardy disappear not long after that, leaving just Devon and Bully Ray. Then Devon's kids get involved. These 2 kids that the writers have still given us no reason to care about, mind you, and they help Devon put Bully Ray through a table. The whole thing lasts maybe 3 or 4 minutes. Too short, too chaotic, way too much stuff going on, a really bad segment in general. Then they make the match at the pay-per-view a 3-on-1 handicap street fight when Bully Ray challenges Devon's kids to be in the match too. Are they trained wrestlers? I don't know. But I don't want to see this. I don't care about it. Of course, I didn't care about the feud anyway, but if they're putting Devon's kids in the match with him, I guess that means they're turning heel on Devon, because that's the way Vince Russo writes. He's so obsessed with swerving the audience that, after a while, the swerves become the most predictable thing in the world. And I don't know for sure if the kids are going to turn heel on Devon, but if they do, it's not going to be a surprise to anybody. They had an 8-woman tag team match. Once again, way too short, but it was alright for the short time they were out there. Plus, they debuted Sarita's cousin, Rosita, that's Davina Fly, and holy shit they got her on TV fast. They must really like her. I mean, she looked okay in the ring from what I saw. I mean, kind of green, but there's potential there, so that's fine. Unfortunately, the match wasn't long enough for her to really get showcased properly. We just got a taste of her. I mean, I was tweeting during this match, so maybe I missed something, but I think Rosita, Sarita, and the Beautiful People were the only ones who even tagged in. Correct me if I'm wrong about that. Why would you book an 8-person tag team match and give it so little time that only half the people in the match have a chance to tag in? I guess because they wanted to cram in the Winter Velvet thing? I'm not sure why. I mean, it did nothing but hurt the match, and we already know that Winter and Velvet don't like each other, so they're not breaking any new ground there. But Rosita gets the win in her first match. That's cool. But something that bothered me about this was that they just threw her out there with no introduction. In the spoilers, there was a backstage segment where Sarita introduced her to Madison and Tara and be like, hey, this is my cousin Rosita, hey, here she is. And I kept waiting for that segment. I guess they had to cut it out because they didn't have enough time available. That bugged me. And I'm not saying it was absolutely vital that they show this, but it was a segment introducing the audience to a new star. It was something that told us who this person is and whether she's a face or a heel. That's important information to have before you put her in a match. But they didn't have time to show it. There's just too much damn stuff going on. So that was Impact. I really liked the opening segment a lot, mainly due to Robert Roode's awesome promo where he totally pooned Jeff Jarrett. That was great. The main event was fun, and they gave it like 15 minutes, even though Jeff Jarrett wasted a lot of that time by playing chicken shit. Also, Morgan vs. Anderson was decent while it lasted, but that's about all I could take away from the show this week. Also, the Knockouts match was good, too. I mean, it wasn't very long, but it was good, and there was a refreshing lack of botches in there, so that was good, I guess, even though it was too short. But then they decide to make Ken Anderson versus Jeff Hardy at Against All Odds a ladder match. Maybe I haven't been paying close enough attention, but I missed the part where this was officially announced. They just decide to make this a ladder match on the Go Home show without really promoting it or hyping it up properly at all. I would think that Jeff Hardy in a ladder match on TNA pay-per-view is something that you would want to announce well in advance and then spend a few weeks to really get the people excited for it. This is not something you just throw out there at the last minute when you realize you haven't done a damn thing to sell this pay-per-view. And that's not me being a smartass either. That's the truth. TNA pretty much threw Against All Odds under the bus so they could put all their focus on hyping the February 3rd Impact. And give the devil its due. It paid off in the ratings. They got one of their highest viewerships ever. And that's great. Congratulations. The question is, was it worth it when you ended up making Against All Odds look like a throwaway show as a result? I don't know. But I'll be honest, I'm not interested in Against All Odds at all. And just from the way they presented it for the last month, TNA has pretty much drilled into their audience that this pay-per-view means nothing. I don't even know if I'm going to review it. I'll stream it and watch it, and maybe if it's a good show, I'll do a review. If not, I'll just talk about it in the Impact video next week. And that's my mindset right now. If TNA aren't going to make an effort to sell this pay-per-view, they can't expect people to buy it. I'll happily buy a pay-per-view if I think they earned my money. But if I think they didn't, then I won't buy it and I'll just watch it for free online. It's that simple.